everyone. Welcome to this week's Karma Cards. I am so excited to see you again and just share with you what's going on in energy. And of course, there's a lot going on. We have been bombarded for the past 2 days with solar flares of different classes. There's M-class flares, which I would say are, medium in a way. I don't exactly know what the classification stands for. But M is lesser than X, and we've been also getting X-class flares. So the X are the bigger flares, M's are mediums, but we're still feeling the impact of them. It's been increasing the KP index up between 6 and 7, which is fairly high. So you've been feeling these symptoms. There's so many ways that you can feel it, and you probably are aware of how you're going through it, although I don't always recognize when I'm feeling those ascension symptoms. I know last Sunday I was feeling a lot of nausea and dizziness, and I hadn't quite figured out that we were having a lot of influx in solar energy, and I was worried I was getting sick. And then, of course, after looking around and talking to a few other people, recognizing that this was a pattern a lot of people were feeling, and realizing that I too was feeling those ascension symptoms. Lately, it's just been that feeling of there's just a lot of movement, and it can feel really tiring. It's been really interrupting a lot of people's sleep, or just even if you are getting good sleep, you don't necessarily feel like you're getting good sleep. So it's important to make sure you're doing a lot of self-care work, a lot of regulating your nervous system, drink plenty of water, and do try to get as much sleep as you can. If you feel like you need to lay down, give yourself permission to lay down if you can, so that you can integrate all of these upgrades that we're going through, because of course we're always going through those ascension upgrades. The other thing that is merging with all of this solar activity is of course the lunar activity, because we have our first full moon. It's the wolf full moon in Leo, happening tomorrow, January 25th. So probably by the time you're seeing this, you might be seeing it right on the full moon of January 25th or just after, but that's also an energy that we're contending with, and it's a Leo full moon. So it's really interesting because Leo is ruled by the sun, and the sun is the co-ruler of this moon, and Leo is a bright, vibrant sign with a lot of energy, just like our sun. And just like the sun in the sky, Leo tends to feel like it's the center of attention. It's the center of the universe, which is an energy we all experience. You do not have to be a Leo to have that sensation every once in a while of just wanting to radiate all that you've got. And Leo is it's one of my favorite signs. I really do love Leos. I'm a fire sign myself, so I resonate with fire signs. But I do love Leo. Leo's connected to the 5th house, which is called the fun house. That's what I call it because it's where love, romance, creativity live. Children are ruled by the 5th house. So it's got all that lovely, beautiful, buoyant, playful energy to it. And it really does it's the sign of sovereignty, and it has a star power to it, which is so great. The dark side is that it really activates our ego. And, when you've got all this star power energy flowing through you, it's really easy to fall into the trap of thinking, I'm just so great. Like I am the center of attention, right? And wanting to just keep pulling that in. And that's the darker half of Leo. So what's interesting is we've got this full moon, which is already an intense energy, in a fire sign. And fire signs, are passionate. They're emotional as well. They've got a lot of energy to them. And it's co-ruled by the sun, because the sun rules Leo, and the sun's doing all of this activity right now. So it's a lot, and you're probably going to be feeling that. By the way, if you are watching this and make it in time to January 25th, there is a full moon spirit circle happening that evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Here's the link, and it's also in the description below if you'd like to join us to learn more about the cosmic energy that's happening right now, the messages that they're holding, to work with this energy, to get messages from the team in spirit, and of course to do psychic Q&A with me. That sounds like something you would like to do. You can join me at this link below. I'd love to see you there. And of course, talk to you and share with you a copy of the recording so that you can use it again and again. Because when we're working with this energy, we've got a 2-week window to work with it. So it's not just about working with it at its pinnacle, which is the full moon, but also the energy of having the full moon wane to become the new moon again. It's all about the releasing process and what we're here to let go of. And this moon is letting you know we got some ego stuff that we're going to be working with and letting go of. And it's for your highest good. Now that brings me to the message from the team, which is all about the benefit of letting go and activating sort of like the fail-safe to prevent ego from overtaking you, and that is humility. And so this moon is going to be talking to us about how to activate or how to utilize humility. And I wanted to kind of speak with you about it from what my team's point of view is, so that one, I'd love to hear your version of it. If you want to add to this conversation, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to read what you're getting out of it. Is this how you're seeing humility? Do you have something to add to it? Do you disagree with it? Drop it in the comments below and let me know. But let's talk about what they mean here, because the first thing I want to clarify is something that a lot of service to others people can get mixed up on when it comes to humility. Because being of service to others simply means that you recognize that the path forward is to work together, and that you're not just here to get all this attention and radiate all your magnificent energy, but also to share that energy with others. So you're naturally likely thinking of, how can I use this to benefit other people, which is fantastic. It's beautiful. It is the path of, it's called, I like to think of it like the express path to oneness. We are already one, but it's that absolute awareness of oneness, the express path to that full unity consciousness that we're all seeking, is to be of service to others. We got to be careful though, because a lot of times humility can get confused with martyrdom. And I've talked about this a lot, but it's worth repeating because it's such a fine line that we have to work within. We're still being asked to work within a balance, even when we're focusing on service to others. We're still being asked to remember that service to others includes you. Now, the martyr is a really interesting archetype because I look at it as the flip side of narcissism, but not in the polar opposite way. Even though they're moving in different directions, they share the same quality. So they're like two sides of the same coin. So when we're looking at a narcissist, this would be an individual who is on the path of service to self. So they're devoting all their time and energy to serving themselves, even at the detriment to other people. So they have no concern about what actions they're taking and how it affects others if it's benefiting them. That would be the narcissist. And so what the narcissist is doing here is they are separating themselves from oneness by determining that they are superior to other people. So their needs are superior to other people. And you can hear the raging ego in that statement, right? That they're superior to other people and therefore their needs are superior. So again, they're very service to self-oriented, and they're separating through superiority. Now, why the martyr is literally the flip side of this coin. Now, they're heading in a different direction. They're actually heading in the service to others direction, but they're behaving in a similar way. Their ego is involved. So it's not a pure act. When you're a martyr, you are still feeding your ego, but you are feeding it rather than separating yourself and saying, I am superior to others. You are separating by saying, I am inferior to others. And so you're still performing an act of separation, and you're still involving your ego, because the ego is designed to create a sense of individuality. That is why we were gifted an ego, so that we could play this game believing we are an individual. And if we believe we're an individual, we will make authentic choices about how to move forward. Like, what's the right way to move forward? What is the truth? What is the path? What is the way for me? If I have this idea that I am somehow a separate being working my way through this program we call Earth, then the choices I'm going to make from that place, I'm going to attribute to me. I'm going to believe that they are my choices. So the ego serves as a tool for us to make authentic choices when we don't know that we're connected to each other, when we don't know our past. And I don't just mean our early childhood. I mean where we came from before this life, who we were before this life, the choices we made before this life, the knowledge we have from the other side. Without any of that, we believe we're making these authentic choices. And it's a test, really. It's a test for us to see if we're in alignment with our true nature or if we're going to try something else. And it's really interesting because you could be a quite evolved soul, but under the guise of this total amnesia and the test of the plane we're on, where the ego is gifted to you to help you make an authentic choice, it really is interesting because some souls, I don't think it's very common, but some souls really choose a choice that might oppose their true nature. And I think that comes from really disconnecting from yourself to some degree. And sometimes it's to a benefit. Maybe they choose better than they did in the past. Sometimes they choose worse. But the point being that our ego is a gift to create separation. Going back to the martyr. The martyr is employing ego because the martyr says, I am inferior to you. Therefore, my needs are not as important as yours, and I'm putting your needs ahead of mine at all times because I don't, my needs are nothing. I'm nothing, right? So when a person who is trying to employ humility goes into martyrdom, they're going into their ego. They're activating more ego. And so therefore, they're actually not in humility. It's not humble to be a martyr because humility is that recognizing of almost a type of neutrality. When you're in a space of neutrality where there is no better or less than, there is neutral because it's all one. It's all the same. That is the first step of humility that my team would point out, is that open, cohesive space where everything's the same. There is no separation. It's simply oneness. The next step to humility that the team would point out is the ability to remain open. And this one is also difficult, especially if you love to learn. I'm a person who loves to learn. I think anybody who's got a lot of Gemini in your chart, you're in that path. Anyone with a lot of Sagittarius, you probably have that path because that's that access of education. The point is, when you love to accumulate knowledge and information, there's a desire to hold on to it. And the ego does get activated in that as well, because the ego is taking in this information and claiming it as some sort of validation of intelligence or knowing. And if we're not aware of that, then we can actually create a static energy within ourselves. Meaning, once I've learned something about this topic, like let's say humility. Let's say I'm reading up about humility and listening to other people's takes, which I did because I love to learn. But let's say I got it and I'm like, nope, I got it. And now I know all there is to know about humility. What's going to happen to me is I'm going to go static in my energy, at least around the topic of humility, that I will be assuming that I have achieved all information that can be received on the topic, and therefore I become static. Or a great way to say it, like one person was talking about it from a Zen master perspective, and they were using the cup analogy. And it's like, imagine that you have this empty cup would represent your mind, and that all the information you're receiving and all the opinions that you're developing and all the facts that you're collecting become like a fluid filling up this cup. And once the cup is full, then it becomes static, right? No more information can come in. The only way new information can come in is if you dump some of that information out. And so in this Zen philosophy, you'd want to be the empty cup, whereas you can accumulate this information, but you always want to leave that room for, I don't know what I don't know. And so I'd like to practice that right now. When it comes to a topic like humility, or really anything, I think I know some things about it, but what I don't know, I don't know. We want to actually employ this in our life and to remain open, but specifically because, not just because having an open mind allows you to receive more information, but because it keeps you in flow. It literally helps you and your mind, the current of your mind, to continually move. It can now be, it now has a pliability and a flexibility to it, which allows you to receive new information and new experiences. So, you know what they say? They say the fool thinks he knows everything, and the wise man knows he knows nothing. And that would be an example of this step of humility, of that holding the thing where go and search and absorb all the information that you desire, but always with a state of like an open hand, or a cup that's slightly tilted so it can come in and go out. It doesn't need to be held in place. It actually takes a lot of energy, if you think about it, to hold to a belief or an ideal, to a perspective. Really anything that we're mentally holding in place takes a lot of effort from us as well. I think that's why maybe agitation comes up when something challenges that, because we're holding on so tight to what we believe that it's really hard to accept any new information that comes in, because you're trying to hold on to this. So it creates that agitation. Whereas there is no harm to you by allowing new information in. It doesn't mean that you lose the old information. It simply means that you're able to move from this point to that point and back again and flow with it and see like what actually is more resonant. I always thought it was this, but now I'm learning that this exists. Like, I don't know, the color black is a random example in painting, especially when you are a self-taught artist or you don't know color theory. You'd assume that in order to create a black paint, you need to go buy a tube of black paint, or that the best black paint would be a tube of straight black paint, right? Because you'd be getting the purest color. When you start learning something like color theory, you actually learn that the more vibrant and alive looking blacks are created by mixing a bunch of different colors together to get to black. And so your blacks, so artists who learn color theory as an example, have black with more depth to it. Their black has like a liveliness to it that you can't get out of the tube. So to bring, my point in bringing that up is simply that it seems, if you were just learning this, you'd think like, no, the blackest black comes from the tube. That makes the most sense. It's right there. This says black and it's a tube of black paint. There's nothing I can do that would make black more interesting than this right here, until your mind is opened to seeing it from another perspective and learning the secrets of how to create something that looks black but actually has a lot of depth. And it opens your mind. Now you've got choices, and that's where this level of humility kicks in, because now it's not that you've abandoned what you've learned in the past, but really now you have options. Do you see the movement? Do you feel that flow? It's like you've got something you didn't have before, and you couldn't have received it if you had only accepted that, nope, black only comes in this tube. That's the only way to get it, right? So that's an example of how it looks to have information, but be open to receiving new information. Not only does it give you a new perspective and a new way to see something, but it gives you options and the ability to use them based on what you're trying to achieve that you didn't have before. Now, the last point about humility that the team would like to bring up is humility is also connected to your greatest strength. So this is where I feel like the Leo full moon might test some people, because the Leo full moon is all about acknowledging your greatest strength, acknowledging your gifts, what you're really good at. And people will notice that, right? That will be highlighted. It will be seen and appreciated by others. So this is where it's tricky, because you're given gifts in this world. We all have gifts. They don't all look the same. It's not always about talent. Some gifts are about the ability to be an incredible listener, or deeply nurturing, or gentle, or patient, or super intelligent. The gifts are endless that we're given. And when the ego is involved, it's easy to believe that those gifts are for you. It's easy to think, I was given all this strength so that I could display how strong I am, or I was given all this talent so that people could recognize how talented I am. Humility is understanding that the gift you were given was the gift you're meant to give to others. It's the gift that you are to the world. Your gifts are most powerful when you are using them to help another. And the universe is always going to back that energy, right? It loves it when the energy it gives you is circulated out because of that oneness, because we are all connected. And just like having a full cup blocks the mind, right? Having that static mind, when you are holding on to your gifts thinking they're just for you, there's a static energy there. It's not going very far, and the universe really can't give you much support, because anything static in the universal body kind of acts like a cancer, like it would in the physical body. The cancer cells have that kind of static energy. They're just holding something. Whereas a healthy cell is a cell that's communicating and releasing its information to the rest of the body to help circulate and keep the body healthy and flowing. So universe is always going to back you up when you recognize that the gifts you have are the gifts that you're meant to share. And if you really want to see how powerful your gift is, look at how you can use it to be of service to others. And when you're doing that, you're also practicing humility. Now with that, let's see what the karma cards have to say this week. All right, if you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how these work. I have 3 decks here: planets, signs of the zodiac, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked my team, what's the message you have for us this week? And I've got 2 sets of answers, a set in red, which are action related, and a set in blue, which are outcome related. And the way that you play is you tune in with that beautiful intuition of yours and feel, what do you need this week? Are you looking for action? Are you looking for outcomes? And of course, you can always choose both. And while you're choosing, let me tell you the timing for this reading. This reading is for January 24th through the 31st. And the flavor of this reading, we've got the moon, which makes sense because it's going to be a full moon tomorrow. So it's talking about our emotional state, how we reflect on things, how we're feeling about it, in the sign of Taurus, which is very much about your values, your belief system, working hard. That all comes up in this position. In the 7th house of partnerships. All right, if you're looking at action, your spiritual action at this time is to defend your beliefs diplomatically. So this is interesting because it reminds me of the portion that the team was talking about around humility when it comes to having that sort of open mind or empty cup mentality. Again, the beautiful thing even about beliefs is you can hold your beliefs, but you can hold them openly, where it's not a fixed state, meaning that your beliefs are going to resonate for you the most, and yet you can hear something else. You can take in new information and even acknowledge it as having some kind of weight without feeling threatened, right? So when we're holding our beliefs because we're afraid that if I hear anything else, this might break me apart, I might lose my belief system, then it goes into a whole other topic about whether we actually believe it or not. Like, are we convincing ourselves that that's what we believe, or do we have conviction? When you have conviction around beliefs, it's very interesting because conviction doesn't necessarily mean static. It just means deeply, deeply grounded. It's hard to sway you from that position. And therefore, when you have that conviction where you know your belief system resonates for you, you're very open to listening to other belief systems, and you actually don't find it threatening. What you find is that you're sort of listening for, how do your beliefs, how do we match, or how are we at least in parallel to each other? Where are we agreeing with each other is actually kind of what you're getting to. And you can have a deeper appreciation, and many times it can help you understand why you believe what you believe. So they're asking us to hold that kind of energy where we are so centered in ourselves that it's easy to hear your partners, it's easy to hear your friends, it's easy to hear someone who's holding a different belief system and not be threatened by it, but rather be intrigued by it and be looking for, where are the parallels? Where do we match? And how are you saying kind of what I'm saying, but just from a different perspective that's giving me depth to my own perception. Mental action at this time: accept the costs of relationships. Okay. So relationships are always going to test our humility, right? This is the part where I think we probably get to learn the most about humility. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, something like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And I feel like that one comes up in relationship probably the most. And I certainly have in the past struggled with that one. In past relationships, I can remember one in particular where I really chose being right over being happy. And the sad part is that no matter how valid what my perspective was, it sort of was, my ego around it really took it apart. It's like I lost validity because I couldn't find the middle ground. I couldn't find the happy place. And I just realized for my part, that was a lot of the behavior that I was bringing was breaking apart that relationship. I mean, there were stuff going on the other side too, but I can remember some key moments where I was just, my internal self, my team's just like, can you just let this go? And I just wouldn't. So again, the cost of relationships, right or happy, when we are practicing being in that state where we're open to listening, we don't feel our views, our opinions, our beliefs, our perspectives aren't something that we have to defend. And if you feel like you have to defend it, that means that some part of you is not in full agreement with it. And so again, we're being asked to practice our diplomacy and recognize that, the cost of the relationship, sometime if you're improving your relationship, the cost may be your ego. You might have to really learn how to let go of your ego at certain points in time and recognize that, the relationship isn't here to support your ego. It's actually here to support the growth of both people and help each other expand and heal in the process of it. And so, if you're thinking that relationships should be this really easy, effortless space, then you're not really considering what growth looks like. Growth is uncomfortable. Growth can feel like a struggle. Growth can sometimes seem like suffering, but growth is ultimately for your highest good. And so we go through that individually, and we're going to go through it in relationship as well. And we don't need to overly idealize relationships. In fact, it's good if we understand what it really takes to be in relationship with one another and how we need to grow to meet those costs, because the more you're growing yourself, the lower the cost is, because it stops feeling like a struggle to you and you start understanding the dynamic of it. And when you start really working with that oneness mindset, then there is no opponent, there is no opposing force. There is only that sense of interconnectedness and oneness, and you start working towards the same goal. But it does take effort, and it's not given to us. It's something we have to work for and work on. Physical action at this time: let your feelings tell you how to use the most direct way and get a fair deal. So our emotions are a great tool. They don't always tell us the truth about the situation, but they tell us the truth about how we are perceiving the situation, which is what makes them so valuable. So oftentimes, if you can identify how you're feeling, you can get down to what you're thinking or how you're perceiving the situation. So this is where tools like Byron Katie and Brene Brown's work come in really well. When you can understand the story you're telling yourself that is creating the emotional state that you're in, because that, getting to the heart of that in your communication with another, is how you're going to get the fair deal. When you're coming to someone because you're upset, and you're saying, you upset me because X, Y, and Z, chances are that person's going to feel attacked. And the chance of you getting your needs met in that situation lowers when the other person feels attacked, because our natural response to that kind of criticism is to become defensive. But when you're coming at it from your emotions and you're like, I'm feeling upset, and the story I'm telling myself is that you don't care about what I'm going through right now. Now, can you please explain to me why you're not talking to me in this, or whatever it is, like as you're approaching the scenario. That's the direct path. That's what I'm feeling. This is what I'm telling myself, and I'm asking you to help me understand what's going on. When you're coming to someone from that perspective, they're way more open and way more willing to work with you to help resolve that uncomfortable feeling by explaining to you, well, this is what's going on for me, and it actually had nothing to do with you, and I didn't even realize that I was ignoring you or not talking to you, and I'm listening now. You can hear how it's already resolving itself. So that's the most direct path, and really it's kind of the path we should be trying to work from on a regular basis, but right now it's especially helpful for you. All right, so now let's look at outcomes with the moon in Taurus in the 7th house of partnerships. Spiritual outcome at this time: the nurturing of resources to maintain balance. Love that. So kind of going back to what the team was saying, the balance here, or the resource you need to maintain balance, is humility, right? When we recognize that, humility has a lot of components to it, but when we recognize that we are both special and not special at the same time, and we kind of get that in our heads where it's like, you are important and so is everyone else, right? Or you are just as unique as everyone else because we're all connected. When you really get that understanding, this gives you some really dynamic resources to work with in terms of relationship, especially if you're honoring it. Now, the ego does not like these statements. Oh wait, what do you mean I'm special, but so is everyone else? Then how am I special, right? The ego just goes nuts on that because it's losing its sense of individuality every time you're acknowledging that. But we're not here to inflate our ego. Our ego is simply a tool given to us to help us feel authentic. Past that, it's not helpful. And it's really one of those things that it's like our friend, it's a frenemy, right? Because it's helpful to one degree, but very disruptive in another state. So we do have to, in order to balance ourselves and to be more nurturing in our interactions with others and achieving balance, we do have to find that place where it's like, I am both important and not important at the same time. And it's one of those things where if your ego is activated, it just hurts to say it sometimes because the ego just cannot take that kind of dichotomy. It needs it to be a black and white space. And rather, it's like you have to realize that you're an important piece of a bigger picture. So your puzzle piece that you represent is important because without you, we don't have a complete picture. But we wouldn't have a complete picture without this person or that person. Like, we need them all, right? We want all the pieces to see the bigger picture. And so when we're coming from that place, and especially when we're coming from that place in relationship to other, like, I'm important and so are you, just equally necessary in order for this to work, well, then we think in a very different way, and we're solution oriented in the win-win scenario rather than a zero-sum game where I'm going to get all the pieces or you're going to get all the pieces. We want to be in the win-win, and humility is the key in doing that. Mental outcome at this time: feelings caused by the practicality of cooperation. So it's pretty simple, right? When we cooperate, we are working together. And that's what we want. I mean, that's how we're engineered even as a species. We are a communal being species. We're a really interesting hybrid of both predatory animal because of the forward-facing eyes and prey animal because our instincts are to group and to come together, and we feel more secure with more people around us, right? So we really have this unique dichotomy that we're dealing with here. But cooperation, I believe, is like a deeply seated need within us. And when we realize, right, that, again, when we're working with that principle of like, when you win, I win, I think there's a lot of feelings that are going to come up. One, ego stuff will come up, sure. Other feelings that'll come up might be a sense of relief. Like, what if all I have to do is really work to see how I can make this, a lot of times when the ego is activated, we're thinking about, well, how do I win? How do I get ahead? How do I get out on top? How do I get to be the best? And you can feel that isolation that comes with that as you're only focusing on yourself and you're only pushing yourself up. It creates an isotope. It's isolated, right? Same key, oh my God, what is the word? Same root words kind of in those two statements, but it's very isolating and it's unnatural. We're not our greatest fear as human beings is being alone. So our ego strives for us to be alone, and yet the very human part of ourselves does not want that to be the case. And so I think when we train ourselves to really think about the win-win, and we really think with this collective energy of like, we're all connected. And so when this one wins, I win. When I win, this one wins. And we're working towards that together. I feel like there's just your nervous system just kind of smooths out, because that's so much easier to do. And in the inner workings of your heart is just, that's how you kind of naturally are. And this ego thing, it has to resolve itself. But interestingly enough, it's like it only kind of goes to sleep the more that you acknowledge that, hey, ego, I appreciate what you give me, but we're doing it this way because this way feels better. So that's coming up during this week as well. Physical outcome at this time: reactions resulting from the productivity of your partners. So remember, as I'm doing this readings, I'm addressing the energy in general. This is what the team says. Hey, this is what everyone's kind of like. The focus, the energy is really supported here if you're focusing in here. So you're not the only one who will be thinking about this. You might be the only one who consciously is aware that that's what's going on, but everyone's sort of under that influence of, I actually want to work towards this balance. And the more that the outside world shows us how ridiculous it is to be divided, the more we long to be united inside. So what I'm getting is that this behavior of working for the win-win or creating balance or being open to listening to other perspectives, it rubs off really quickly. So whoever starts the chain reaction to it creates a chain reaction, meaning like if it's you who's like, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now, this is the story I'm telling myself, Can you explain to me what's going on? Because this is how I'm interpreting it. That person picks up the baton, if you will, and runs with it and shares that with you, but they also turn around and use that themselves because they realize, like, during this time, there is this great energy of kind of harmony of like, I want to get that, whether it's conscious or not. You're going to be conscious of it because you're paying attention right now. They're going to be responding to it and reacting in kind. So it's going to keep going. It snowballs and it just keeps going, which is a great energy. So, be the one who creates the snowball, if you will. Try these out. Focus in. Think about the greatest gifts that you've been given and how you can use those. Start with how you're feeling to understand the perspective you're holding so you can communicate that with other people and work towards the win-win, and watch people around you naturally do the same thing because it's such a beautiful feeling. It feels good and it feels easier. And I think that sometimes all we need sometimes is for somebody to mirror that to us or to show us, how could this be easier? And then we just kind of follow suit. And that's the energy I'm getting for this week. Thank you so much for watching these karma cards. If you're liking them, please like, share, and subscribe. I am trying to build up this channel as well as my Rumble channel because YouTube can be really unpredictable. So if you find that my videos aren't here anymore, which I don't know why they wouldn't be, but just in case, I do have a Rumble channel also called Blythe Starlight, and I will continue to do my work there as well as here. So I'm sending you so much love. Mwah! Have a wonderful week, and I will see you at the next Karma Cards.